Socially, like I said, I always stood out. My peers would be, on the playground having fun, and as the song said, I would be the one standing over here because I wasn't welcome. Because, as you know, sometimes we are more talkative, sometimes we're obnoxious. Just be honest, I wasn't. I was not obnoxious. I was a pain, but not obnoxious, In fact, for me, I was a tattletale. I would always get all my classmates in trouble because I was a tattletale. I remember Cindy from Brady Bunch. She was a tattletale, Yeah, that was me without the pigtails. Anyway, so when it came to schoolwork, my peers would work, but I wanted to play. And when it came to play, they play, and I wanted to work. I was never in sync. Plus, another thing, just to let you know, people with ADHD like myself, we are emotionally and psychologically years behind. I notice all my close friends right now are in their early 30s or late 20s because that's where I'm at psychologically, emotionally. I relate better with people who are in their late 20s and 30s than people who are in their 40s because one, I don't feel I'm on the same page of those of my age. But I relate perfectly and click with people late 20s, early 30s because that's where I'm at. Now at school, 5th grade, 6th grade, mentally I'm 2nd grade, 1st grade. And therefore I would act like a 1st or 2nd grader. Junior high was bad because everyone's dating and I'm still thinking I'm in like 4th grade, So socially I just never was in sync with my peers. And if that wasn't bad enough, sometimes when it came to hearing things, I always heard something different. Definitions. Your definition and my definition sometimes are not even the same thing. Here's a prime example. How many of you had your parents use this phrase on you? Go straighten up your room. Okay. What does that mean? Clean it up. Okay. I did not know that. The first time my mother ever said that to me, she goes, "Dear Michael, go straighten up your room." I looked at her, I said, okay, walked to my room, and for about an hour and a half, I am pushing on all 4 walls in my room, wondering, when is this room going to be straightened up? Now you're thinking, why'd you do that? The way I took what she said was, go to your room, straighten up before it falls on your head. She didn't say that, but how else do you interpret straighten up your room? Thank God she did not ask me to go pick up the room, because I don't know how I would try that, but I would have tried. Now recently, another definition moment happened. A couple years ago, I was on tour in Minnesota doing some concerts, and I had a friend of mine who was my singing partner who's got extreme ADHD. His name is Ryan Zachariah Noel. He's more extreme than I am. And we were taking publicity pictures for this tour. So here we are standing, next to each other. We're trying to look like models and all that funny thing. And so we're standing there, we're doing these poses. And all of a sudden the photographer goes, "Okay, guys, lips together." What? Guys, lips together. Why? Guys, lips together. Why? What we did not know was our mouths were open and she wanted us to close our mouths. And we're looking at each other freaking out like, oh my gosh, we're never getting invited to any church again, So, but see, once she looked at us like, close your mouth. And we're like, oh, thank God, because again, we both took it like, well, we're supposed to kiss each other. This is kind of interesting, But see, it's things like that. Her meaning and our meaning, even though we can repeat what she said, lips together, but what she meant and what we thought she meant wasn't the same thing. So imagine in conversation with someone with ADHD, you might say something or use a certain term or a phrase or a click or cliche, and what you think and what they think might not be the same idea or the same thought. Plus, we're also known to have selective hearing. In fact, every teenager has selective hearing, but we have more extreme selective hearing. We hear bits and pieces, and sometimes that makes great antics. Case in point, before I went to the ministry, I worked in a place that no person with ADHD should ever work in, and that's your local McDonald's. Now let me tell you, this is the setup. This is 1984, after my senior year, summer. The uniforms back then were made out of pure polyester. Bell bottoms. This is post-disco days, okay? For those who don't know, polyester is what grandmas wear now, but polyester is a synthetic material that never wrinkles, you always look good in, but if it was a hot day, you never want to be wearing it. It's not what you want to wear on a hot day. And so here I am in this polyester, bell-bottom, burgundy McDonald's uniform with a big fat yellow M, like we didn't know where we were already, and a paper hat made out of, looked like a sailor hat. You guys have Steak and Shake here, right? Okay, the guys wear those paper hats. That's the kind of hats we had at that time from McDonald's. And I'm sweating. I'm itching because that uniform is awful. My hat made out of paper is falling apart because I realized paper and sweat don't go together. And so the hat's soaking up the sweat and it's falling apart in my head. You know, and I'm fresh out of high school with zits and braces, the whole 9 yards, you know. And you know, and in McDonald's, there are many distractions. French fries, chicken nuggets, filet of fish, hamburgers, buns, all going off at the same time. And each one of those have different sounds and colorful lights. And that's like eye candy to ADHD person. You're like, well, which one do I do first? They all look good. And that makes this sound like, you know, everyone makes a different sound and they eat different colors, and all of a sudden the manager comes to me and says, David Michael, we need you to dress the McDonald's buns. And my ADHD interpretation was, David Michael, we need you to press the McDonald's buns. They said dress, I heard press. And wanting to be an example of a good Christian worker, I went straight to the toaster, pulled out the whole tray of buns, put it on the table, and with the palm of my hand, smashed the whole tray as flat as a pancake, making up the new Miss Squash sandwich. They didn't like my invention, kicked me out of the kitchen into the drive-thru booth by myself. Let me tell you something about ADHD and creativity. We are very creative people, especially in a boring situation. Why? We don't like to be bored. Why? Because our minds are constantly working. And if you put us in a boring situation, we will find whatever it takes to keep ourselves occupied. So here I am in a drive-thru booth, pretty small, bored to tears. It's summer, it's hot, I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden my ADHD creative mind kicks in as I realize, hey, there's a microphone in there. And that microphone's attached to a big, huge box outside. Cars pull up to the box, people talk to the box, and the box talks back. And another thing is, I can see the customers, but they can't see me. What happens if I was to do voices over the intercom? They'll never know. Car pulls up. It's a mom, and in the back seat of the car, she's got 3 kids fighting like cats and dogs. How many of you got brothers and sisters? How many of you are the oldest? We're the ones that get in trouble for everything, are we not? We get blamed. It's our fault because we're supposed to know better and all that. How many of you are the middle or the youngest? You guys get away with everything. I believe it. I've seen it. You know, my sister could do no wrong. And how many of you have ever been on those long vacation trips with your family? You know, where dad or mom won't put on the air conditioning and you're burning off, and if your sibling barely breathed on you was enough for you to clobber them, you know what I'm talking about? Okay. The kids are fighting. Mom is tired. And I looked at her and I felt pity for her. And I said, you know what? I'm going to give that mom a break today, McDonald's. And I'm going to give the kids the voice of that purple and green dinosaur from PBS named Barney. Hi, kids. It's me, Barney. Hey, do you know that I love you? You know that you love me? You know I have a song that goes just like this. Ding! I love you, and you love me, and welcome to McDonald's. And all the kids stopped there fighting. They looked outside the car window, and they said, Mom, Barney's at McDonald's! And I knew I was going to have a lot of fun with ADHD working in the drive-thru booth. The next car pulls up. Businessman, business suit, BMW. He's too old to hear the voice of Barney. but he's at the right age to hear the voice of the cold and calculus AT&T operator. Good afternoon. You have reached McDonald's drive-thru. Your value meal comes to $2.99. Press pound for more options, please. How many know there's no pound sign in that menu board out there? It was so funny to watch this well-dressed, well-educated man look at the pound sign. You have 2 seconds before deletion. Please press pound. Your order has been deleted. Please try again later. And thank you for coming to Palo Heights McDonald's drive-thru. Goodbye. But the biggest gag I ever got away with was when a bunch of high school and college guys drove up to the box. And this was the voice they got from the box. Ch-ch. Well, hello there, big boy. Welcome to McDonald's drive-thru. And how can I help you? You should have seen the looks on those guys' faces. They looked at the box. They looked at each other. Oh my gosh. Look at the box again. And I kid you not, I watch every one of these guys begin to comb their hair, tuck in the shirts, and beg me for my home number. Now, I realize I can get away with this because I can see them. They can't see me because if they did, I wouldn't be talking to you right now. So those were the funny things about having ADHD. We're impulsive, we smash buns, we make voices, you know. We don't seem to be in sync. But the downside for me was 6 days out of 7, 12 years of my life, I was repeatedly told to my face, you are the most stupid, worthless, unwanted person to walk the face of this earth. You have no value. You fail in school. You will never make it. You're a mistake. We don't want you around. You will never be accepted. How would you like to have a teacher look you in the face and say, I don't know why you bother trying. You're not going to make it. I came into the choir room in my senior year in high school. By this time I was playing the guitar. I dragged my guitar everywhere I went. People called me the hippie back then. I mean, I dragged it, and between every class break I would play it in practice. And I came in and my teacher looked at me, Mrs. R, is all I use as the first letter of the last name, looked at me and just said, that is not a real instrument in my book. That's a toy. And you think you want to be a singer? Well, you scoop your notes, you're flat. It's too competitive. You would never make it. You would get eaten alive. So why don't you do yourself a favor and give up now? But that wasn't the worst comment I got from an adult I looked up to. The one that really hit me for a doozy was going to my youth pastor after coming back from a retreat. How many have been on a youth retreat and you experience the closeness of God and you feel your heart rekindled again? And I went to share with my youth pastor from the church I was raised in that I felt since I was 8 years old that God called me to the ministry. And I won't forget the reaction. He sat there at his desk, leaned back and shook his head and says, well, dear Michael, you must have heard wrong because you're not ministry material. Don't bother. Try something different. Being told I was stupid, worthless, and unwanted. 6 days out of 7. Understand, from Sunday to Friday, I was constantly reminded by my peers that I was worthless, I was unwanted, I was a mistake. And then, of course, I had grades to kind of back it up. I would get F's and D's, which I thought stood for fabulous and dandy. Or P's, which I realized that the school said, well, we don't want to have you again for another year, so just at least pass them. I mean, I barely got out of high school with a D-. I graduated on my senior day, the last day of school. I went to see if I passed my government test. I mean, All the invitations went out for graduation. I had my cap and gown, but quite frankly, we did not know if I was going to graduate. And I went to check on my test, and there was D-. Thank God my girlfriend did my homework that night, kind of thing. But when you're told you're stupid, worthless, and unwanted, in other words, you don't repeat in a Christian setting, 12 years of your life, 6 days, please picture this with me. Sunday to Friday, you are being told to your face names and called words, and you're being pushed and you're being shoved. And we're talking both in Christian setting and a non-Christian setting. I went to a public school. And you're being reiterated that you're nothing, you're worthless, give up, you're a mistake, don't bother, don't try. You shouldn't be here. Do you not think that's not going to affect someone? How many remember the little saying, sticks and stones can break my bones, but names can never hurt you? Anyone ever heard that saying before? Let me ask you a question. Has that saying ever worked for anyone before? Because I remember telling the teacher, well, I wish they threw sticks and stones because the bruises will go away a lot quicker than the words they're saying that stay with you for a long time. Because what they said to me through elementary carried into junior high and got worse from junior high to high school, that by the time I got out of high school into my college career age, I was so convinced I must be stupid, I must be worthless, and therefore I'm unwanted. Because who wants to be around a stupid, worthless person? I could not stand looking at myself in the mirror because every time I did, I saw what they projected on me. There is the worthless, stupid person to walk the face of the earth. I was convinced that was it. I hated everything about myself that time. I had bony fingers. I remember, watching my peers, especially when it came to sports, I looked like Jerry's kid on the field. I was terrible at sports, and therefore I didn't want to try because, all my male peers had big, huge hands, and I had hands great for Palmolive commercials, And my voice. Everyone's voice changed, but my voice remained the same. I kept talking, trying to lower it. I couldn't lower it any lower. And every time I answered the phone in my mom's house, they thought it was my mom. No, this is not Mary. This is her son, David. And I kept thinking, God, why am I even here? I failed school. I'm not wanted. I'm rejected. I can't stay focused. I have everything going against me. Why did you even make me then? What is my purpose for being here? And the big turnaround for me was April 1999. April 20th, 1999. Does anyone know what happened that day? It would radically change the whole thing. Columbine. I remember coming home from doing some errands, walking in and turning on the TV and just staring and watching this whole scene unfold. And I won't forget this. As I'm watching this scene unfold on Columbine, I remember saying out loud, I wish I could go there and do something. I never thought God was going to take me to task on that, because a few days later I get a call from one of the churches and says, we're flying you out. You've been asked to sing your song at one of the students' funeral. I don't know anyone there. I didn't know this student at all. The day of the service, I go and sing. As I'm starting to play my guitar, the Lord began to speak to my heart. Who gave you those bony fingers, by the way, for you to play the guitar like that? And who gave you the voice that you don't like that's now going to bless millions of people because this is broadcast nationwide? Is it not I? You're not junk. If you would trust me with your life, I will take those stumbling blocks, those ADHD, all the stuff you hated about yourself. If you will trust me with your life, David Michael, I will take those stumbling blocks and make them stepping stones for my glory and your good. Will you trust me now? 4, I knitted you in your mother's womb. You are fearfully and wonderfully made, and I know what I have for you. I know the plans I have for you, says the Lord. Plans to prosper you, not to harm you. But seek me with all your heart, and you will find me. And that's what began to turn this whole thing around. Next thing I know, my handicap has become a ministry all on its own. A book, a CD, DVD, a song. In a few weeks, I'll be going to London, England, to share in front of teachers, and then right after that, back to Lafayette, which is on the border of Russia, to share with those teachers there. a struggle. I hated a thorn in my flesh that now God's been using to bring healing and hope to people. So we probably went past time, but that's just my story.
You know what? Let me say a couple things, and we have some time for some questions, but we can go about another 10 minutes or so.
Okay.
Yeah, first of all, I think we always have to ask ourselves as teachers, how are we going to help David Michael? And I've heard him talk a couple times, and one, he even mentions a teacher aide, or a student teacher. A student teacher made a big deal.
Yeah, Miss Karen,
Like,
Karen Brown.
You guys are going out and doing some teacher aiding. Who knows that God might not put that opportunity in your life. As you were talking, a couple things came to mind. And one of my students wrote me one time, don't interrupt, because I tend to, maybe I have a little bit ADHD myself, I don't know. But one thing that came to mind is, the big thing now is state assessments, right? And how do you do with these kind of tests, David? With this, is that a good challenge for you, one of those?
I'd rather have those than the other ones.
Oh, rather than essay? You mean color in the bubble?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because that for me was guessing.
Oh, this was guessing.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
that was easy.
okay.
Just fill in the blanks, and like hopefully this will do,
Okay, well,
It's the truth, I mean.
how many of you are now? The big thing is with No Child Left Behind and things like that. We've got to give all these state tests. They have to do well, and your whole school depends on how well you do on this test. Who can tell me now? They're mostly multiple choice, because multiple choice somehow, and I use multiple choice. It's just I work with my students to do multiple choice. And I work with kids with all kinds of disabilities. If they want their driver's license, they better know how to do a multiple choice test. What do we call, not the answer, what do we call the A, C, D? What do we call those? You have the answer, and then you've got the A, the other ones. Anybody know what those are called? The other ones? Yeah. I didn't learn this until recently. I thought, oh, that's exactly right. Those are called the distractors. The distractors. Aren't we doing a nice job with him? We're putting distractors in there. I mean, he gets distracted enough. And now these other possibilities, they're actually called the distractors. And I thought, boy, we're sure not giving kids that have this much of an opportunity to do well in that kind of a test. Another thing came to mind as you were talking. How many of you noticed that how many have noticed that at the cash station? What are those? Can you tell me why at a drive-up you would need Braille on it? Are you telling me the person driving is blind? I've never quite figured that one out. It's like I'm all for giving these people, the assistance they need, but I haven't figured that one. If somebody figures that out for me, I'd be happy to apologize or whatever. But sometimes I don't understand where that came from. Anyway, we have a couple minutes. If you would like to ask David Michael anything, he's great at speaking off the cuff. If something that if you have a question for him, take a shot at it.
Just don't hit me.
Go ahead.
When you hear so much insults and rejection, so much hate, let's say, going through you, I know it wasn't easy, but just like I can advise you from how do you manage to just I get angry at yourself, not at God, but at yourself, for like not being enough, not like maybe because you know that he has a plan for you, maybe you think that you're not doing your part, therefore things are not working. How do you manage to just like don't go your heart,
I tell people that because I knew the Lord at such a young age, I knew who to turn to. But I made this comment, had I not known the Lord, Columbine would have happened a lot earlier, because I understand why Columbine happened or any other school shooting. I know why the kids react, because I dealt with those same feelings of animosity and anger and all that. For me, it did affect me growing up. I mean, I like I said, I couldn't stand myself, because you're told God's got a plan for your life, and you're thinking, well, where is it? Because I don't see it. I don't see a plan. I see nothing. I'm just wasting space. For me, the wake-up call was the Columbine thing, because all of a sudden I was thrown into a national spotlight doing the very thing people said I could never do, sing and minister. And here I was being asked to sing and minister in front of the whole nation. And now, for me, I keep in mind, even on my drive out here, I was driving from his house over here, I started crying and said, well, Lord, look what you've done with my life. Because I am sharing something that growing up literally paralyzed me and made me feel inferior, and now you're asking me to share the thing that I hated about myself growing up and taking me all around the world now. And as I was driving here, I just I call it a Holy Ghost moment. It's like, wow, Lord, only you could have done this. I couldn't. I couldn't even conceive of this, For me, staying close to the Lord keeps me going, because I still get distracted. I can still get discouraged. I look at people my age that I think are doing well better than me, or, I think they have it better than me or whatever, but I realize, well, that's them, that's not me. I have to follow the Lord and let Him direct my life. And the enemy still likes to attack me. Well, so you still fail. Like, I remember, I'm looking at this classroom setting, and I keep thinking, could I survive in this setting? If I was to go to college, would I be able to deal with all this? And I'm thinking, I don't know. I probably fail. I listened to some of the classwork. Last year, I remember you had this whole list on your wall. I was reading through it, and I was getting overwhelmed just reading the whole thing, because I thought, they got to do all that paperwork? That's like, I can't sit down long enough, But, I don't know. Just for me, my walk with the Lord keeps me focused. When I don't walk with the Lord and I stray away, then I get the consequences from that. But the question you asked about how to not, what was it again?
Like how not let it get to what is not God's plan, not being fulfilled because of Him, but because of you.
You mean when I get in the way?
Yeah, pretty much like why how do you not just blame yourself?
I do. When I get in the way and I detour from what the Lord has, and I'm in the mud pit of it because of that, those choices, I do get on myself. But then I realized there's grace, and I thought, okay, this is not where I want to be. This is not where I'm supposed to be, Lord. Let's pick up from here and try again. Like I said, I've known the Lord for 35 years, but there was a couple of years where I sidestepped and been prodigal even, and during those times, look back now, I grieve that I wasted some seasons in my life being stupid and being rebellious and playing out sinful, But even though I might remember it, and if I wanted to have a depression day, I can just think about what I did back then and get real depressed. Or, okay, that was then, but Lord, look what you've done with me now. And that's because I need to walk with you. Because when I'm walking with you, you know where I'm going, I don't. If I walk with you, I'll get where I'm supposed to be. So it's walking with Him that keeps me going to where I'm supposed to go.
I think a dangerous question sometimes that students with disabilities have asked me is, did God make me this way for a purpose? That's kind of a dangerous question for me, because I don't want to say, well, David, God gave you this gift so that you can have a ministry. And he might feel that way, and I think I've asked him about this before. He says, yes, I can do that. But I don't want to say that God singled you out and said, I'm going to screw up your head or screw up your body. And I've had a number of kids that have asked me that, and David saying, why did you make me this way? There's a fine line there between the fact that things are kind of screwed up, and I don't know what that perfect body is when that you were promised after everything comes to an end. But that's always been kind of a trick question, I think, sometimes when students say, well, God made me this way so I could have a better testimony, right? And in the book of John, Jesus is passing this guy who's blind, and the disciples right away say, well, who screwed up? Was it him or was it his folks? And Jesus says, no, that's not the way it works. But the glory of God will be seen through what can happen with this person. But that's always been, to me, that's kind of a trick question. That's a dangerous question that I think a person wants to answer. And David says, yeah, I believe that. Or I talked to this David Ring, and we watched his testimony of how he lost his mother and father when he was young, and that really changed his whole, did you lose your parents so you could have a better testimony? And he said, well, oh yeah. But it's kind of dangerous too at the same time. I don't want to say God doesn't do that. He doesn't go and play with your life that way. But when you know God, you can certainly glorify him with whatever you got. Okay. Thanks so much for coming. I will spread these out because there is work to do too, even though you wish we could just, I know, I still, if I'm distracting with those colored papers, I apologize. I know I did my master's thesis on what and this is class back.